Fitness CF is such a unique story and one that I can truly relate to because it was built on value. We've been successful in the Central Florida area for over 20 years.
Looking for a new system was a priority because in the fitness industry, it's incredibly important that we capture as many potential members. So we needed a system to make sure that nothing was slipping through the cracks.
The tangible impact has been a game changer. On a day-to-day basis, I can move or assign different marketing opportunities to help recuperate or direct future sales.
Colin, great to have you here. As always, thanks for joining us and look forward to a great conversation. Your gyms have been opening and closed and opened and closed, but very interesting to see maybe what your wider thoughts are on some of the trends that you're seeing from these reopenings that are both encouraging and also perhaps a little bit disencouraging.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Listen, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to share our experiences. Hope you're well. So we have clubs in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Shanghai, and Beijing, and so we're seeing slightly different reopening business kind of status because you've got different social distancing measures in different countries. Each country or city has a different approach, and so that affects the rebound and the extent of the closure and the extent of the community cases impacts the business. And it can change in a day. I often wake up thinking, okay, what's going to happen today? And every day is interesting. You just never know. But we're seeing, to be honest, what gives me a lot of comfort, and the most comfort is what we're seeing out of our clubs in Shanghai and Beijing. They reopened. They were the first to close in the world last January 27th, last year, and then reopened from March to April to May, kind of staggered. And we're seeing record check-ins. And so when I look at that and I compare to, say, Hong Kong and Singapore, what happens is that the recovery in each market depends on that closure. We had a closure period a long time ago. I thought it was long at the time, but now when I look back at other places, it was quite short. So the recovery was quite quick and it's been sustained. And we haven't had many cases in the community. So we've seen a good growth. It's back to pre-COVID levels. Hong Kong's different. We've had 3 closure periods. And in the middle, we've had some spikes. We had the cluster at a gym in Hong Kong in March, and that caused a lot of problems. So sometimes it's not so much what we do, it's what happens in maybe either industries or other clubs that affects us as well. So in Hong Kong and Singapore, it's slightly different as well. Hong Kong, when we reopened, the rebound was very strong, because I think the first closure was only 2 months. But then we had a second closure. So the reopening was a little softer because people were a bit more hesitant. And the third reopening, because the cases were so low, was a bit stronger. But then we had the other cluster. Singapore, the government has been very cautious. Rightly so, I get that. So when we did reopen, we had a lot of, listen, you know better than me, right? And thanks for your support in Singapore. But, groups of 50 in a 30,000, capacity limits of 50 people in a 30,000 square foot gym does limit you. And then the distancing around in group classes for pure yoga as well. So that made the recovery a bit more perhaps muted. But I can tell you the demand is there. The demand for people to lead healthier lives is there. It's never been stronger. Once we get through this, and we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and I think it's the end of the tunnel, it's not a train coming straight for us, I'm very optimistic.
We are seeing similar demand, Colin. I think everyone watching this video should be hugely encouraged by what the long-term future of our industry has. It's more a case of how short that short term will be for us to realize that. Let's look at digital and virtual, Colin. You were one of the first adopters of these services, of these experiences to your members. Looking back on the last 12 months, of course, no doubt there was a huge uptake in the use of these services. As your facilities have reopened, and no doubt there has been a drop-off in demand, has there been a considerable drop-off in demand? Is there a higher baseline perhaps than there was before? And where are you seeing return of investment from your digital and virtual services?
Yeah, no, very good question. I think, listen, 5, 6 years ago, I looked at digital and I didn't know if it was a threat. I thought it might be. I'm thinking, like this club behind us, a bit quiet right now. But when we build these clubs, what happens when people can take a yoga class or have a session in front of a screen at home or in the office or when they travel? Are people going to stop coming to the clubs? And I didn't know the answer. And then when we shut and we offered all these classes, we're offering 60 or 70 live classes a day. We were getting very good traction because the clubs were closed. And what I did find was when we were reopening, people were saying, I love the online classes. I never thought I'd like them as much as I would, but they are not a replacement for the physical experience that you get, the emotional experience you get going into a club. It's a social experience. But they did say and I heard this from a lot of members, they prefer coming to the clubs, but they will work out more because when they can't come to a club, they have an option that they feel comfortable with, which is the digital online option. So I'm more comfortable now, and my feeling is to run a successful offline business, you need an online element. You have to put two, and you got to marry the two. It's got to be complementary, and that's, I think, the future of our business of wellness, both online and offline.
Now, you've successfully saw members returning to your facilities, Colin. There's been a lot of talk about how gyms can operationally get best practice in terms of sanitization, hygiene, etc. But let's look actually at the mechanisms of getting people back in the door. How have you managed to kind of weave people back in? Has it been through incentives? Is it PR campaigns, certain types of marketing? Is it education, awareness? What's worked for you that perhaps you might be able to share with other operators here?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no silver bullet, and you can't rush it. What we found, it's the most important thing is, in the middle of a pandemic, people don't mind spending money. They don't mind buying things or doing things if they feel comfortable and if they have a high degree of confidence. And you can't rush people into doing something. If we discounted our memberships, people still aren't going to come. They're not coming because they don't feel comfortable or they've lost confidence or there's no trust. So what we have done is we spent a lot of time trying to rebuild that trust, letting people know that the environment that we provide is safe. This is what we're doing. We show them videos about the deep cleaning, about the sanitizing, about the masks, about the distancing, about all the things that we've done. And it comes down to the timing and tone of these messages. You can't go too fast. And every market is different because of the number of cases in the community, because of the government's response, because of, and this is what we found out in Hong Kong. We were doing a great job, I believed, operating safe facilities. But because somebody else, unfortunately, had a big cluster, we were collateral damage. So there's only so much we can do. But that's where the industry has to come together. And we're only safe if everybody is safe. But I think it's timing and tone. It's rebuilding that trust and confidence. It's not about money. It's when people, we're in the business of helping people live happy and healthier lives. And you can only do that when people are confident and they trust you. And they know that when they come to the facilities, we're gonna look after them, make sure that we're going to do that.
Let's look at Hong Kong, of course, because it had that cluster. But one of the good things that came out of it, of course, was that all of the gym staff were asked to be vaccinated as part of a greater safety campaign. Great to see, of course, and again, just adding credibility to the fact that we are operating in a safe environment. What are your thoughts? Did that actually tend to work? Were people coming back? Did they believe that campaign? And then furthermore, what are your thoughts in terms of, vaccinated members coming back into the gym? Are they feeling safer than before? Is there any kind of way that we can try and bring them back faster? So any thoughts around that, Colin, at all?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we have a task force in the group to encourage both our staff and our members to get vaccinated. And again, getting vaccinated is a very personal decision. So our approach is to be supportive and encouraging. You can't be, listen, I'm fully vaccinated. And if somebody chooses not to, I've got to respect their decision. But I think a lot of it comes to education. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stories out there. But at the end of the day, the only way we're going to get through COVID and get out of this is by getting vaccinated. And so for the people that are waiting, I don't know what we're waiting for. I mean, it's not going away. What the government did do on the back of that cluster, they prioritized the fitness industry for vaccination, which was great. And I think the take-up rate was pretty good. We are doing a lot of internal communication. We had a doctor come in and did a workshop for our staff, and we actually we recorded it and made it available to the whole industry in Hong Kong and also our members, because we wanted to educate. And it was great. There was a lot of positive feedback because a lot of the questions people had were answered by an independent doctor that made them feel more comfortable. So we saw a take-up rate. So we're trying to navigate this. It's tough. It's challenging. But I think we are seeing more and more people get vaccinated. You know, it definitely within, you know, where I work here, if one person gets vaccinated and has a good experience and shares it with the rest of the team, which they're doing, it's encouraging more people. I think the same will happen at the clubs with members as well. It's the only way out. So I encourage everybody. I mean, it's tough. It's been a tough year and year and a half almost, right? But I want to get this behind us.
Well, it seems to be one of the plus sides, Colin. It has been, you know, industry collaboration, the defragmentation and sharing of ideas. And I think Hong Kong, you know, from what I remember a couple of years ago to what it is just now, it's quite incredible the amount of communication and collaboration that's going around. I know one of those initiatives was the Safe Fit 100 and of course the Hong Kong Alliance. What's happening with the Alliance? What's happening with Safe Fit 100? How do you see this more connected and more communicative industry moving forward in Hong Kong?
Yeah, no, good question. We, so on the back of COVID, we formed the Hong Kong Alliance of Professional Fitness and Wellness Operators. There's 9 of us. There's also a couple of other alliances. And what we did was, you know, these were they are competitors, but we also realize we're in this together. And so we have regular calls. We have a WhatsApp group, and we're talking every day, sharing best practice about what's going on and how can we all do well together. Because we know that either we're going to sink or swim together, and we're all going to swim, that's for sure. And so out of the last cluster that we had in Hong Kong at URSIS, we took the initiative as an industry to form what's called Safe Fit 100, which is a industry-led voluntary initiative to set certain standards that go over and above what is mandated by the government, whether it's from a ventilation point of view or a capacity point of view or regular testing of employees point of view. And so two members from our alliance and 2 from each of the other 2, so the 6 sit on a committee. I don't personally sit on the committee. I'm there to help and support, but they will make all the decisions to make sure this is independent, industry-led, and again, going over and above what the government is mandating. And it's been well received by the government. And from what I hear from some of the committee members, we're getting a lot of inquiries and people signing up. We need to show as an industry that we take this very seriously. And we know the measures that we can undertake that will ensure that the premises are safe. And sometimes, you know, we can, but we're also advising and working closely with the government as well. And we can move faster. If there's a drop in cases, we can change capacity, both up and down.
Now, at the time of this interview, Colin, Singapore has its gyms closed. It's gone through another kind of reopening and closure. It seems to be, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It is such an incredible time and so challenging. I mean, I think one of the key messages we've been talking about throughout the last 12 months is how do we get fitness in to be seen as an essential service? How do we kind of reposition it, you know, to be part of the healthcare industry, the prevention industry? As we see facilities reopen, there's been quite a few people that have kind of flocked back to the traditional fitness marketing, the traditional vanity marketing. How do we as an industry move forward as an essential service? Do we have to reposition ourselves as healthcare? Do we have to reposition our marketing and our value propositions towards immunity? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, a good question. I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we have to work closely with the governments. We have to have a seat at the table around policy. We have to educate the governments about the critical role we play. The science is there. The science shows if you have a strong immune system, you are less likely to catch COVID. And if you do, you'll have a milder case. And you are in control of your immune system by exercising. And then you've got the mental wellness issue because of what's gone on. So there's no doubt, but what we need to do is get a seat at the table and constantly not just talk to the government when we're closing or when we're closed. And that tends to happen. So you need players that are involved in the business that are playing the long game, that are willing to have these conversations even when we're open and business is starting to pick up, because that can change. As we found out this week in Singapore, things were rosy, then suddenly we're shut. And now we're talking to the government. We've got to be talking to them all the time. That's the first thing. We then need operators that are going to communicate and talk to each other on a regular basis and also play the long game. I'll not think, okay, I'm open, now I'm just going to drive as many units as I can and fill our clubs today and tomorrow. They're going to be thinking about 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road. You've got to play the long game, and you've got to talk to governments. And at the end of the day, it's a government decision. And if they better understand our business and what our values are and how much we can help society, I think we'll have a much, much better chance. The science is there. We have an important role to play. We have to work closer with the government.
Now, you've been very active in trying to grow these partnerships, not just through this pandemic, Colin, but well before. You've been very open to these partnerships. How do you believe these partnerships will evolve? Obviously, you have the alliance, you have government relationships. What more can industry do between itself to make sure that, we actually are 1 + 1 is 3, not 2? And this isn't just a COVID initiative. This is really an initiative for us to add long-term value to our industry.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of us coming together. And I know URSA has a number of initiatives around that to get like-minded individuals to work together to agree on a long-term plan. I think you need both. You need the short one to get through the current pandemic, but also the long-term plan to work with, whether it's with URSA, with governments, with the WHO, in repositioning our industry as an essential service. The science is there. We're in the business of preventative healthcare. And I think that is one of the, if there is ever a silver lining out of this, that's what's going to come out of it. People value their health more than now. And it's more than health, it's wellness. Wellness is about your physical well-being and your mental well-being, your social well-being and everything. And people are valuing it more. What we've got to do is, it's almost like we have an opportunity now to reposition our industry as an essential service. And we can do that, as I said, by two things. Number one, coming together and playing the long game. Number two is sitting down with the governments. And, we do it. I actually had a call on government yesterday, asking how the industry was doing and suggestions, ideas. So there is actually a willingness on the side of the governments. But we need to kind of be, I think, perhaps a bit more proactive in doing that. But I think we've got to do that. We've got to come together. We've got to play the long game. We have an opportunity to reposition our industry.
Now, long term, Colin, we all know our industry is bright. Of course, you've got quite a large portfolio across a number of countries. How has the pandemic impacted your investment plans for the region? Of course, they have been stopped, but are there certain silos, certain parts of your business that could see accelerated growth in the future? Yeah,
good question. Short term, it's about getting through the current situation and preserving cash, because what I've learned is you get up and, the clubs are open today and, they could be closed tomorrow. So until we see the pandemic until we see with a high degree of certainty that the pandemic is behind us, it's a matter of just making sure we can get through the current situation. And then it's about planning for, once we're through COVID, about opening new offline. Definitely offline for us is a massive opportunity still. I've never had as much kind of confidence as offline, but equally, I have more confidence online as well. So we will be spending and investing more money in digital, because I think you need both online and offline as a future business model within the wellness industry. But I think also there is going to be great demand from landlords, also governments, to help, that we have a role to play in helping the population become healthier. So I think there's a number of things, definitely offline, definitely online.
Now, the word "a new normal" has been bandied around more so than blue sky thinking. And we're not one to be advocates for it here, but let's just call it the future. That's exactly what it is. It's not a new normal. It simply is, what does the future hold? Let's look at the future, Colin. Looking at the future, what changes and maybe what reverts back to normal? Things will change, but perhaps things will also normalize. What are your thoughts, be it contrary or not, on what will change and what will stay the same?
Okay, so long term, I think it will go back to normal. Pre-COVID will be the same. Will be the clubs will be as busy as they were on the back of good vaccination uptick, better therapeutics, more testing, and people just they want to go out, they want to socialize, they want to exercise. When we get there, we'll vary from market to market, depending on the extent of the closure period and the number of cases in the community. Certain markets where they've had huge number of cases and very long closures, that period may take longer. Markets where you had a short, punchy, maybe closure, and then you'll get a quicker recovery. And we're seeing that. But I think, look at our clubs in Shanghai, record check-ins, people are in there. I mean, if you walk in there now, you'd be amazed. So it's already happening. But I think also there'll be a bit more digital because people will want to exercise and stay healthy more often, both physically and mentally. I think the mental side, mental wellness is going to be bigger. I think online is going to be bigger. There's going to be more interest in wellness globally.
Let's look at you, Colin. We turn the spotlight on you for the closing question, my friend. You've always been an advocate for fitness and for wellness, and I know that you practice what you preach. What have you relied upon in the past 12 months for your own physical health and your own mental well-being? And what positives are you going to take into the future?
Oh, geez, tough question. What's kept me sane? I'm going to get personal now. My kids. I have 3 young kids. And they were away for the first half of last year. And that was tough. Well, maybe it was a blessing in disguise they weren't with me, but spending time with my kids just, it brings everything into perspective, right? Got a crazy world at work sometimes. You've got to deal with all this. But at the end of the day, you got to put things in perspective and be grateful. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm lucky. There's a lot of people much worse off. So kids, I do practice. I do my yoga on a regular basis at home, mornings and night, playing tennis. I think you've got to have certain parts in your life that are just reasonably normal. And that's how you escape. And then I have my kids that are my bosses that make me sane. And so that kind of, that's helped me. What was the other question? Sorry.
What positives are you going to take forward? And then maybe just some closing words of inspiration to anyone watching.
Yeah, positive is, listen, people now value their health. I mean, I've always said there was a big momentum. This has accelerated that momentum. People value their physical and mental wellness more than ever. And it's every part of how they live, what they eat, who their friends are, where they go on holiday, where they stay, make sure that there's a good gym. So I think from a business point of view, it's as we get through this, never be more confident. And so I think people have to play the long game and do what's right long-term for the business. Don't think about just today, just tomorrow. You've got to look after your staff and you've got to look after your members. And last but not least, be grateful. Be grateful because things could be a lot worse.
I think that's a fantastic message to end it on, Colin. I know how much you've sacrificed over the past 12 to 15 months sharing so frequently and so often with so many in the industry, given that you were at the very front of this through your China operations and now with Hong Kong and Singapore. So thank you for flying the flag. Thank you for your inspiration, and wishing you and the family all the very best. And I'll let you get back to your 3 kids.
Cheers, thanks. All the best, and thank you for your support. Thanks, Ross.
In a gym environment, you're always on the move and there's lots of things that you have to think about. So using Gear Lock, you don't have to worry that your equipment is protected.
So we're able to just go out there and play the sport we love without having to worry about germs.
With COVID and the pandemic happening, I am much more aware of germs and being safe within the basketball community.
In lots of gyms, there's a lot of large mats and surface areas, so it's great that Gear Lock has a pump where you can spray really quickly, really easily.
Put a few pumps on the ball and just rub it in and wait for it to dry. Nice and easy.
You only have to apply it every 12 hours. It just makes all the protocols so much more simple.
It's super reassuring that all my equipment is protected, so I 110% recommend Gear Lock.